Today is November the 12th, 2018. My name is Tanya Fincham, and along with Ms. Alex Bishop, we're with Oklahoma State University. And today we are in Luther, Oklahoma, to speak with Dale and Frances Weger. Correct?
Bill.
Bill. Oh, where'd I get Dale?
Bill.
Well,
We'll start all over again. We're in Luther, Oklahoma to interview Bill and Frances Weger. And this is part of our Oklahoma Married for Life project. So thank you for letting us come today.
okay.
Frances, let's start with you. When and where were you born?
I was born January the 16th, 1922, and I was told it was east of Marlow. But I'm not sure whether it was east of Marlow, because I know that's where they live, or whether it could have been where it was near Marlow. So, you know where Marlow is?
I do.
Okay. I really think, because I went to the house where they said I was born. I believe that house was, I believe it was west of Marlow. Because I remember going to the house. Yeah, let's put west of Marlow. But it was just, you know, plain old house. You know, I mean.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
I was the oldest. I had one brother, and then I had two sisters. Mm-hmm.
And tell me a little bit about your parents.
Well, they were. My mother was born in Jolly, Texas, and I'm not sure where my daddy was born. I would say he was born in. I'm just really not sure of what. I know it was in Oklahoma, but I'm not sure. But I know Mama was born in Jolly, Texas.
Okay.
I remember going there.
And what did they do for a living?
Farmed.
Okay. So you had chores.
Oh yes. Milk cows. I'd go out and help milk the cows, pick cotton, pull bowls, chop cotton, you name it. I was the oldest, so I was Daddy's boy. And then we did. Then I had another sister, and then we had a boy. We only had one brother, but I think he was the third. Then we had another baby sister.
And describe the house that you grew up in.
Well, boy, that's terrible. We moved probably every year.
Oh, okay.
So, Daddy was sharecropped, and so wherever he thought he could get the most for it, that's where we moved. So, there was no one house. There was several houses that we lived in.
Okay. Well, then how about elementary school?
Well, let's see. I went to. It wasn't Denton. It was. I don't know what the name of it was, but it was. Are you familiar with that area? You don't know anything about that area.
Just a little bit.
There was a cemetery, and my folks lived about 3/4 of a mile. No, it was more than that. A little over a mile east of that, and then a mile south of there, and then back east, and that's where I was born. So. Kind of hard. In and around Marlow, just what I put. Yeah.
Okay.
Because we lived out off and on all my life.
Where did you finish high school?
Sterling.
And in what year?
1940.
Okay.
Well, when we got married, August 3rd, 1940. Yeah, I was getting ready to enter college, and he didn't want me to go to college. He said, let's go get. I knew we'd get married because we'd been dating for about 2 years, but Daddy wanted me to go to college.
What were you going to major in?
I can't remember now.
Well, how did you two meet?
How did we meet? School. We didn't like each other. We went to school together. Don't you remember Denton School, Bill? We went to Denton School together.
Oh, yeah.
But
That was when we first met.
Yeah, but we wasn't dating or anything. It was just a boy and another boy at school, you know.
Okay, then let's switch to you. When and where were you born?
I was born west of Sterling in November the 5th, 1919, and our grandparents lived a half mile north, and my mother's grandparents, my mother and dad, and they had a sharecrop until 1925, and in 1925 he bought 80 acres in the Denton community, and that's where I finished my grade school. And I too went to Sterling. That's about the only high school, because you lived, if you lived one place, you had to go to Marlow, and if you went to another, you had to go to Lawton or Sterling.
Okay.
It's just, each county had to go to a certain place.
That's right.
And did you have chores around the farm?
I sure did. It was my part to get enough wood to start a fire the next morning. And I knew what it had to be. And if I didn't, my brothers would wake me up and say, "Bill, did you get enough kindling?" And that was my job. And,
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had, there was 4 of us boys and 3 girls.
A pretty good sized family.
It's a good size.
And what do you recall about the house?
About the house?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, let's see. The first one we moved into was, it wasn't very much until Dad decided he wanted a concrete house. So he built a concrete house and tore the old one down. And of course, on the farm, it was just, everyone had things to do. And you did your part and let the rest of them do their part. We had enough that there was enough to go around for all of us. And sometimes we'd help one another, and other times we hindered. And so, but it was a lot of fun with 7 of us children. It was a lot of fun. Did we fuss once in a while? Absolutely.
And who would discipline you?
Yes, there was a lot of discipline that went on.
Did your mother do it or your dad?
Well, Dad was overwhelmingly the boss. And of course, Mama, she didn't argue with Dad very much, but we knew that they, excuse me, we knew that they sat down and talked, and especially at that big old round table. a lot of talking went on, and we knew what was going on, and we knew that what our job was to be. We knew what our discipline was to be, and all of those things that kept a family going went on around that big old round table. And Mama included. She was a jolly person. Great.
What was your favorite thing she cooked?
Oh yeah. Dad was, Dad gave the orders and did most of the work, because he was the type person that he didn't trust us to do it exactly like he wanted it done.
Well, what would you do for fun?
For fun?
Uh-huh.
Swimming holes and creeks and gathering up pecans and working in the field with getting the crops in. But we even had fun when we were doing the work.
Mm.
And it just seemed like it was supposed to be that way.
Did you have, did you sing or play games?
Oh yeah. Oh, we had enough brothers and sisters. We could play all kinds of games, and a lot of times we'd just we'd go to the swimming hole, because our swimming hole never did go dry. It was a spring, and we'd go swimming just any time we wanted to.
Well, how far was the school from your house?
The school?
How far was it from your house?
A mile and a quarter. Well, I say that we cut across the pastures, and it was a mile and a quarter, but if you went around the road, it was 2 miles.
So would you walk to school most of the time?
Oh yes. We walked wherever we went, unless Dad was going in the wagon. And we used to have a lot of meetings and everything in the church, and we would go every night in that wagon. And we enjoyed that.
Horses or mules?
Bill?
Horses or mules?
Always horses.
Horses.
We didn't, Dad didn't like mules. And, but unless he rented another farm, then he'd get mules from somebody. And you didn't, on 80 acres, you didn't have enough grass and stuff for horses and cows and mules all together. You just didn't have enough. So you had to take what you could pasture.
Okay. And so you picked cotton as well?
Ma'am?
You picked cotton?
Oh, the main staple in farming was cotton. And but during the war, 1 and 2, he raised a lot of peanuts because the Army needed the material that came from peanuts. So we raised a lot of peanuts also with it, but there's a lot of feed for the horses and cows.
Okay. So, and you graduated from high school in 1940?
No, I didn't graduate.
You didn't graduate.
I
How?
just, some of them called it quitwait.
How far did you go?
No, I rode the school bus 6 miles to Sterling School, high school, and and she rode the bus at the same time, but we were acquainted, but not necessarily dating until I got into high school. She was always ahead of me in high school and grade school because I played basketball and I stayed behind quite often just to play basketball.
And how far did you get in high school?
9th grade.
Finished ninth?
I liked 1 month finishing 9th grade, and I had a disagreement with my dad, and signed up with a CC camp. CC camp, stayed 2 years, and after I got out, that's when we got married.
Where did you go with the CC camp?
Oh, I went to Worland, Wyoming to begin with, and then came back to Hobart, Oklahoma, and then we moved the camp from Hobart to Gould, Oklahoma.
And what sort of things would you do in the camp?
In the camp, well, we were doing some things that I didn't like because when we was on the farm, we dug Bermuda grass out of the farm. We didn't like Bermuda grass because it would cover everything, and we was planting making terraces for the farmers and planting Bermuda grass at the end of that terrace so it wouldn't wash away. And that's the part that I didn't like. But in Wyoming, we built fences, drift fences for the ranchers.
Do you remember how much you got paid?
How much we pay?
Mm-hmm.
We got $30 a month.
And did you get to keep?
22 of that went home to our parents. See, it was, the 3 C's was mainly for the whole family. $22 went home, and you got 8 for toothpaste, toothbrushes, and other things. Very few of the boys bought very many cigarettes because even though they were 15 cents a pack, it was expense that they didn't want.
How often would you come home from the camp?
Every week if I wanted to. We was off from Friday evening till Monday morning.
Okay. You just had to find a way to get there?
We wasn't supposed to own a car. Some of us did. And we would uh, all get in one car and go home and drop one another off, or we'd hitchhike, and then it was safe. You could hitchhike without being afraid, but like it is today. But mainly hitchhiking, and sometimes the boys would find a train that was going to their town, and they'd they'd hitchhike on a train, which was, to us, it was a lot of fun.
Did you know Frances at that time?
Oh yeah,
But you
we were
weren't-
still going together. We went together all the time that I was in the CC camp.
Okay. And did you go to visit him wherever he was? No.
Oh,
No, I didn't.
Huh?
I didn't go to visit you wherever.
didn't.
I didn't go visit you wherever you was in the CC
Oh
camp.
no, they weren't allowed to. They weren't allowed to be on the grounds.
So she was one of the reasons you came home so often.
I'd go home. Yeah,
So how long did you date before you got
2 years.
engaged?
2 years,
2 years.
38 to 40.
How did you ask her? How did you propose?
Well, I was getting ready.
Let's go get married.
No, I was getting ready to enter Cameron College, and he didn't want me to go to Cameron College, and that's when you asked me to marry you.
I didn't.
He didn't want me to go to Cameron. He's afraid I'd find somebody else.
Well, I was afraid she'd meet somebody else.
You snatched her up quick.
That's,
And my daddy had it already had it made for me to go to Cameron. My father.
that pushed it in the right direction. What-
Well, how long were you engaged before you got married?
Engaged?
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know what the word was.
We just dated.
And
We did a lot of walking, and he didn't have a car part of the time, and he'd walk up, and we'd go to Hurley's Grove. That was a place that everybody, all of them met, and we would go down there, and sometimes it'd be to a singing or a gospel meeting, and didn't matter. We had some place to go, but we walked. I don't remember when you got the first car. When did?
oh, when we got the first car was in 1940, a 38. It's always, I had one car in mind, and that was a 34 Ford. I thought that was the greatest looking car.
And he'd come to see me, and he'd park kind of up on a hill. So when he'd go down, he could start the car.
She'd hear me coming.
Yeah, I could hear him coming when he
Because it
left
was,
home.
there's only a fence between their farm and ours for about 2 years. And we got better acquainted then.
And did parents approve?
Didn't what?
Did the parents approve?
I'll put it this way, there
think
was
so.
no disapproval that I knew of.
Did you ask her father?
No.
No, he just picked me
No.
up one morning.
Why ask him? I wasn't marrying him.
We was getting ready. I was getting ready to enter college, enter Cameron College, and he picked me up that morning. And he said, "Let's go get married."
And did you get married that same day? You went that day.
Mhm.
Where did you go?
Walters,
Walters,
Oklahoma.
yeah, Walters.
To the
And,
Justice of the Peace, or?
Mrs.
Bozo or something like that.
What?
I've got it written down, the woman that married the person,
Oh, Mrs. Bobo.
Bobo, yeah.
She was a witness. And we walked into the county office there, and everybody started grinning. They knew what we was there for. Yeah. So it was, and then we went to Walters because we didn't think anybody would find it out. We was going to keep it secret for a few days, and it had just so happened one of the neighbors carried a Lawton paper, and Walters always put their news in the Lawton paper, and they had, her sister said, "Daddy is really mad about y'all getting married," but nobody ever said a word.
But he wanted me to go to college.
Did you exchange rings? Did you have rings
This is the ring he bought me.
on that day?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what you wore?
No.
Do you remember what she had on?
I didn't think it was anything special.
I do.
What did I have?
You had on a white and blue kind of what kind of material was it? I'm not, but it really looked nice. And I picked you up where you worked at Mrs. Morris's,
Mm-hmm.
because I was working 10 miles away from there for my uncle.
For
Yeah.
$1 a day. We got $1 a day for working all day. From whoever paid it, we was working for.
His name was Norton. Yes. I told him, I said, I'm leaving at 12 o'clock. And I didn't tell him. I didn't tell him that we was getting married. I said, I'll be back tomorrow. And that was a long time ago.
Can I
No,
inject something?
Sure.
Mom, Dad, you need to tell them how when you first saw Mom, when you first met Mom.
I was going to ask, what was your first impression?
Oh, I was sitting out in our front yard playing, and she came by on a horse, and her legs all spraddled out like that on that horse. And that horse was a big old horse, and a little colt behind it. And she sat there way up here on that horse. "What you doing?" "Well, I'm playing." And that was it. That was the first time we met. That is before they ever moved to that community. And then later on, her grandparents rented a farm a half a mile from the house, and we got better acquainted because she was going to school. But we still didn't have any affectionate feelings towards one another at that time. And it grew later by a blind date. She was acquainted with a young girl that lived next to him, and Don Pearson was my close friend, and he borrowed his brother's car, an old Star, and we went to the party, and our parties was like ring games or something that for, you know, you get in a circle and
Somebody would be in the center.
you try to get in front of the girl that you wanted to put your arms around. And then we got ready to go home. The old Star wouldn't start. I had to go get that old car with the team and the next day. And we walked home that night. Let's see, that was, I had to walk a mile, 2 miles. And y'all had to walk a mile. And of course we had to walk home with her. It was a half mile up and back. So it's altogether we walked that night about 3 miles getting home. And that was one time.
What was your first impression of him?
Oh,
I don't know. I can't remember. I just thought he was another friend, you know.
Mom, how old were you when you first saw Dad when you were riding on that horse?
I would say I was about 15, wasn't I, Bill, or 16, when I was
Well,
on that riding on that horse.
when you was on that horse?
Yeah.
Oh, no. No.
Well, how old do you think?
You was taking a message down to
Yeah.
your granddad.
Yeah, I was
So,
they didn't have phones. There was one phone in the community, and it was at the community store. And so I had to take messages from my father to my grandfather, and I went by their house.
I think you were somewhere between 8 and 10,
But anyway, I took messages.
because your dad would, they didn't think anything, you know, there wasn't anything nasty or dirty going on like, out in the country,
It was safe.
there was nothing like, you know, stealing or, there was stealing, but I'm talking about bothering other people. You could send your kids 8 or 10 miles to take a message or something like that, and not worry about being bothered. And so it wasn't the same kind of world that we was living
That's
in.
right.
And a lot of things was done in fun, and that was our main goal as children, was having a lot of fun.
But we had parties. One of the neighbors would give a party for all the kids in the neighborhood, you know. And we went to those parties. Not all the time, but a lot of the time we would.
And did church play a role?
No.
No church.
No.
In my life,
Uh,
it was very muchly played a role in my life.
Well, we went to church, but not any certain denomination could come and preach at Hurley's Grove, and my daddy would go hear them, you know, but he didn't belong to the church.
She's talking about Hurley's Grove. That was a community house, is what it was. And anybody could hold a meeting that wanted to in that house. And it was built as a community house. And I never did go there once or twice, but they didn't live in that community very long, and but my impression that I got was when my dad, he would have one tie and one jacket that was a dress jacket, and because farmers didn't dress up. So Dad, if it was raining, snowing, or ice or anything like that, he took care of the communion, and he'd stick it underneath his coat, and he'd take off across
Field.
those pastures just the same way, because we met in the school building, and if no one else could go, my dad went, and he didn't say you have to now. He just got ready and went, and if it was the weather was good enough, we went with him.
In a wagon.
Sometimes we'd go in a wagon if it's far enough. 3 miles was far enough. You'd get in a wagon, all of us would pile in that wagon, and away we'd go. Yeah.
What denomination were you?
That was Church of Christ.
Church of Christ.
And it was we didn't think of it as any denomination or anything. We were going to worship, and that was our purpose. And she didn't go until we married.
Well, we would go to meetings. My daddy would take us to meetings at Hurley's Grove when they had meetings, Bill.
Now you bring back some memories. Her grandparents, one of them, her grandpa, was in a meeting at Hurley's Grove, and they had lanterns for lights, you know, kerosene lanterns, and this old gentleman, he was in his 60s at that time, and a bug got down his collar, and he was all bent over trying to get that bug out, and the first thing you know, there's 3 or 4 gathered around him praying for him. And it embarrassed him so bad that he never did go back. But we thought it was so funny. My brother married his daughter, and that's how come me to know about it. And there's a lot of fun things went on in life.
Sure.
And my mother, she had 4 sisters and 2 brothers, and everything was funny. When they got together, it was fun, and they'd come to our house, and my mother, she would see something that was, no matter what it was, she'd see the funny side and laugh about it. She's jolly.
Had they been born in Oklahoma?
They lived, most of them lived in Oklahoma. One of them lived in Sterling, one in Shawnee, one in Seminole, one in Altus. Victory, I'll correct that, is Victory instead of Altus. And we visited, mind you now, that it was a Model T, that we was going to one another's house or
A wagon.
wagon, one of the two. Yeah, I was raised up in a wagon and buggy and Model T. The first car Dad, he traded a horse for a 1925 Model T.
That would have been around in the Depression time.
It certainly was.
Yeah.
Certainly was.
Do you remember much about the Depression?
Sure.
Yeah, what?
The
Yeah, I can remember about the Depression, and you can too, can't you?
Did what?
About the Depression.
Oh, the Depression.
Sure, we
I don't even.
nobody had
Those-
anything. Nobody had anything.
It didn't harm us like it did most people, because we raised our vegetables and everything, and sure, we got 3.5 to 5 cents on a pound of bale of cotton. It was 2,000 pound bale, and we'd get 3 or 4 bales a year, and that's what we lived on. And we raised a lot of stuff, and Mama raised garden all the time. We had a peach orchard. Dad we had a vineyard, and that's how come him taking care of the communion of the church was he had a vineyard, and we'd mash that juice out, and that's the wine that we called it, out of the grape juice, and those were part of it was fond memories, but in as far as the Dust Bowl was concerned, Dad would hitch up a team when the wind started blowing, and hitch it up to an old Hera that was fingers, and go out and rake the ground so it wouldn't blow away.
But then they formed terraces. That's when they formed the terraces.
Oh yeah, when the terraces came along, Dad built the terraces, but that didn't keep the wind from blowing that sand away. We lived 7 miles southeast of Sterling, and there was about 40 acres of that 80 that was sandy. And before that, we lived east of Sterling about 3 miles, and it was nothing but sand. And we lived next, this is funny, we lived next door to a family, and they had 13 children. 7 of us and 13 of them. We would meet, don't you go to the Weigers now, we won't. We'd meet halfway and play all day and then go home. But part of that was, we were children that the Dust Bowl, we remember the dirt and the prices of cotton and everything, but it didn't bother us like it did our parents.
Well, with sand was so bad, you couldn't hardly, where we lived, the sand was blowing so bad you couldn't hardly see at times. That's how bad it was. and then they started terracing the land, and that helped when they started terracing.
I don't know whether y'all have ever seen the way a Dust Bowl started. It looked like you've seen the huge roll of clouds coming in from the northwest, and but ours, instead of rain, it was dust, and it came from northwest part of Oklahoma and Texas, and Texas, Denver, Colorado, and Kansas.
But that when they started terracing the land, it wasn't quite that bad.
Yeah, it was.
Well,
Terraces didn't stop blowing.
yeah, but it wasn't that bad. I said it wasn't as bad as it was.
Well, the terracing
That
terracing
terraced.
was for
Keep your land from blowing
to
away.
direct the water that was on the ground in the right direction. The terraces went this way and carried the water out to the at a slow pace, and carried it out to the end of the row without washing. And terracing kept it from washing the land away. But those old cotton rows, you start out with that cotton row starting here, and you'd end up over here almost a quarter of a mile. Oh, if that was a big farm, you'd have to stop in the middle of the field and weigh your cotton.
Yeah, we had long sacks. My mother made ours, and it had a thing that you could put around your neck, and you could drag it. And when we
Hey.
got it,
You started out with a gunny sack.
but when you started, but after we got, see, we did all of my daddy's farm.
Farming.
We got the cotton. We picked it for a long time, picking it out of the burrows, and then we started pulling bowls, and pulled the whole thing. And Daddy'd take it to Marlow and they would separate it there. But you had to have gloves on when you pulled the bowls, because that would just tear your hands up.
Let's face it, no one was immune from the Dust Bowl days.
No. It hit everybody.
The Depression, as we called it, because everybody, Dad would go to Oklahoma City to visit his sister that lived here, and he'd come back telling us about soup bowl lines, 3 and 4 blocks long. And that was hard for us to believe, that people were lined up just for a bowl of soup.
But now on the farm, we had food to eat. Not food, soup or whatever we had.
Well, we had, at our place, we had sweet potatoes piled up in the backyard and covered with fodder, and then dirt on top of that. And that was our main staple in the wintertime. Plus, down in the cellar, there was half gallon fruit jars. We had 6 rows of tomatoes through the wetland part, and peaches and sweet potatoes and cooked. Man, they were good. Mother would slice those things and sprinkle a little sugar over them, and we'd have to sell an old hen or a rooster down at the grocery store just to buy enough of 5 pounds of sugar. And
Well, see, my father was in the Army, World War One, so he got $18.75 a month. And that's all the money that we had. And he would buy staple food like what you,
Flour and
flour
sugar.
and sugar and stuff like that, and baking powders, and yeah, that's about all it would take.
Well, would you have to do that when after you two got married during World War II?
oh, now
No, not
No.
that bad.
now we're getting into a different phase of our life.
Yeah,
When we got married, I was helping my father-in-law on his farm and my dad on his farm until my brother, he was a fruit peddler, I think that's what they called it. But he had a corner in Lawton on 4th and F, and had a fruit stand there, and I helped him on that fruit stand. When I was in the CC camp, I'd come home and help him with that. And then after we married, both of us worked in the restaurant. He bought out a restaurant, and we worked in the, in the restaurant for him.
he got $1 and I got $1. Working
Yeah,
all
we
day.
got $1 a day, but we got all the hamburgers that we wanted,
We had plenty to eat.
and plate lunch, and the plate lunch was 35 cents, and hamburgers was advertisement was 6 for a quarter.
But us working there, we didn't pay anything when we
No.
worked for him.
No. But then
What was the name of the restaurant?
we stayed.
You remember what our name?
What?
Do you remember what the name of the restaurant was? Paris
Cafe.
Paris Cafe. That's
It
right.
used to be there on East Street, and 400 block of East Street, and he started that I think in 1938, and I would help him when I come home, and then he bought and sold old houses there in Lawton, and we would stay in one of those houses, and of course that was, we didn't have to pay him for it because there was a trailer sitting right behind that restaurant that we stayed in when we first married, and we stayed there until he came along. He showed up, and then we moved to another house that was bigger, and they sold the house, and then it didn't go through, and he was born, and Mrs. Yates, she was
A practical nurse.
practical nurse, they call her, working for Dr. Joyce, and I stayed in the room and held her hand while he was being born, and they stayed in half of the house, and we stayed in the other half when it didn't go through.
People had no money back then. No money.
I want to mention something that I forgot to mention a while ago. During the Depression, the reason the Depression, there was no money flow.
Sure.
You could buy cheap stuff, but you couldn't get it. You'd go to Cress's and buy a shirt, a nice white dress shirt, for a quarter, but you couldn't. That was a
Couldn't get,
quarter of a day's work.
you couldn't get the quarter.
You worked all day for sun up to sundown, not 8 to 5, but it's sun up to sundown. You worked for $1, and it was that's what made it real hard. Was there was no money flow.
That's right.
It wasn't easy to get money.
My
Yeah.
daddy got $18.75 a month because he was a World War I veteran. And somebody went to Washington before that to talk to them. That's when they started drawing that $18.75.
Oh, I'm sure they know about the story about the soldiers going to Oklahoma City, and camping out, and Washington, D.C., and camping out in cardboard boxes, and first one thing and another they could live in, protesting that they wanted that 1875.
And they finally got
And
that.
they finally got the 1875. And it was so funny. They got 1875, and in the CC camp, we were getting 30 a month. That was always strange to me, and but that was the Depression. Was there was no money flow.
No, it was
You
not
could
money at
work
all.
all day and get $1.
$1, so
And,
you get.
It's
Well, then after that job, what did you do?
they had one.
After that job, after the restaurant job, what did you do?
Oh, that I went to work for a knee-high bottling company, and
And
I
I think
didn't-
by that time we had Billy, didn't we?
yeah.
I had,
But that's the reason we quit working in the restaurant, because she had to stay at home and take care of him. And so when she had to, I went to work for a knee-high bottling company. And after that was Fairmont, and I don't remember some of the others. It was, you took whatever you could get. And I finally got working for a furniture company that I stayed with it for almost 13 years. And old enough that he started helping me. And so then I got back with Fairmont, then Sears, and I stayed with Sears. It was something you could depend on, was Sears. And I was there when I went to work for Sears when they bought out B&O Cash Store at Temple, and B&O at Sterling. And all these B&O stores that were in these small towns, Sears bought them out. And that's the way Sears started.
Oh, you didn't serve in World War II?
World War II,
He went to,
I spent all of my time right out here,
he had a bad eye.
Douglas
They wouldn't take him.
Aircraft. They put me in 4F, and I asked the lady in Lawton, I said, what should I do? She said, get in defense work. And I said, where? I was ignorant, I didn't. I'd stayed on the farm, and my dad had 4 children, and they called him in World War I. And it wasn't that bad in World War II. So I went to work, I worked for Fairmont for a while. And then, but my best job was with Sears. It had a plan for the workers, and nobody else had a plan for the workers except Sears. And that's the reason I stayed with it. I was part of. They made you feel like you were a part of the company, not just working for them. You were part of the company because you shared with them. Mine got up. It was 10%. Before I quit, there's 10% of my salary went to well, like this, what is it, 401? Or something like that.
Yeah.
Anywhere, the workers finally got to where they could get, they could save some money by working for somebody else. And Sears started that, and they invested the money for us, and that was a joy to me, because that was one time that I went home and told Frances that certain percent was going into a savings at Sears. I didn't ask. I said, this is what we're gonna do, because I recognized that it was the best deal that you could get in public, working for the public. And so that's where I stayed until I was 66.
Okay.
Well, how many children did the two of you have?
Oh, yeah.
We had 5. We had Billy, and we lost our second boy.
Billy was the first one.
Billy was
They came
he was
along.
the first, and we lost Ronald, our second boy. And then we had Anita, and then we waited about 5 or 6 years and had 2 more boys, Mark and David. So I had 5 children. We had 5 children.
So did you take any family vacations? Yeah, ever go on?
One time we went to Arkansas, don't you know, in a vacation, remember?
Oh, when they gave us 2 weeks pay, we would plan ahead Sometimes we'd go to Arkansas. Sometimes we'd go on what we call campaigns for Christ. That we went to Rogers and New Mexico, and then when we got a chance, we'd go to Germany, see Billy and Kay.
I think, did we make 3 trips to Germany?
We went twice.
3. He said it was
And
3.
We went to the old Germany, wasn't it, Billy? Where we went to all that gate that they had, that famous gate.
The Brandenburg Gate?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was in Berlin. We went to
went-
Berlin twice while it was still occupied.
Yeah,
What,
that was fun years.
He was going to ask you
you
something.
said Campaign for Christ. What was that? Can you explain what that was?
Campaign for Christ?
Campaign for Christ was Jimmy,
Larry.
who?
Larry West.
Yeah,
Larry
West.
West.
And we stayed with him until she had her knees operated on. And we'd go out and we'd just talk to people.
We'd knock doors.
And
Talk
we'd, we'd canvass the community. And we went out of our way not to agitate people, because that counter, it doesn't work good that way. And so we'd just go to a door and talk to people if they wanted to. If they didn't, we thanked them and left. And
It's all about becoming a Christian. That's what it was.
So the two of you went together and did this?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we went together.
So did you work while you were married? I mean, while you were having younger children, or did you go back to work at some
No,
point?
I didn't work. He wanted me to, he said, I want you to stay at home and raise these children. So we did. So I managed what he made and brought home. I mean, I managed down to the very last penny, because he didn't want me working. He said, your job is to stay at home and take care of these kids. And that's what I did.
Now we ask you about your parents. Who was the disciplinarian of the children? You or him?
Well, we both, who disciplined the children? You or me? Mostly he did. Yeah.
I
Well-
can answer that, both of them.
she stayed at home, and this was how we worked it out. I said, she wanted a job. I said, okay. We sat down and we talked, and I said, you can get a job if you can stay at home when the kids leave for school and get home from school.
So I started
If
selling
you can
cosmetics.
if you can find something in between, okay.
I was a
So
cosmetic
she
seller.
started selling
Cosmetics.
cosmetics, and my sister, well, I think was the cause of that. Was she tried out on Luzier, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And she started in and made good money at it as far as that goes.
I
It
sold
was,
for over 40 years for Lucia Cosmetics. And
she,
stayed at home and did it.
she worked, people, delivering it. And I said, that's costing you too much. So they started coming by the house and picking it up. And we worked it out to where she made money and I worked all the time.
Well, I wanted to give our kids music lessons. And that's one of the reasons I wanted the job.
Have some extra money.
I had as a preacher, asked me 2 years ago, do you think that a man and woman can live on one salary? And I said, sure they can, but you have to discipline yourself. And you can't just go out and buy a new car every year. You can't go out and buy new furniture when you want to. You have to plan ahead. And sure, you can live on one salary, but you won't have as much. You'll have to you'll have to figure things out ahead of time. And so I think that's, I think they can do it today, but it's very difficult.
Well, you've been married for 78 years, right? What's your secret to being married so long?
Well, I think, my part was that I loved my husband. And I wanted to study. That was the main thing. I loved him, or I wouldn't have stayed with him.
Well, how do you define love?
Well, I'm going to,
I don't know how to define exactly how to do that, except I just knew that I loved my husband. And that didn't mean that we didn't have difficulties. We did have difficulties in our marriage, but nothing that would separate us, really and truly.
when you can look at the other person and say within yourself, I want to do something that'll make that person happy. When you can look at that person and say within yourself, I am totally dedicated to this marriage. There's no room for to even think about divorce.
Well, my father and mother and your father and mother lived together.
Well, they never even
Thought about a divorce.
they didn't consider divorce was never. It was a dirty word.
Now, some couples say they have regrets. Do you have any regrets?
No, I don't. Do you have any regrets?
No. No. I don't think that I could have. I don't think I could have found anybody that was more of a helpmate than she has been.
I said the same about him.
She loved our children, and she wanted what was best for them. And in loving the children, she the love that she had for me, it had to be there to start with. And you just love for one another is, I want to make that person happy.
Well, our parents lived together. His parents and my parents. They never thought about a divorce.
And I've seen my mother and dad when I was young. Dad would go and visit his folks down at Durant and Colbert, and come home, and Mom would meet him. He'd the last mile or two, he walked home from Lawton sometimes, and she would meet him while he was getting to the house, and they would hug one another. And but as far as showing like you would think that if this couple loves one another, they're always loving on one another. That loving is caring for another person. Loving is giving yourself to a relationship that can't be found anywhere else. It's if you, where can you find another person that will care for you, and through thick or thin? Dedication to a marriage is a must. Dedication without question. You just don't do things that harm the other person. You stay with them, thick or thin. It's there's some people that don't have it, and others have it and waste it. We always called it looking at the greener grass on the other side of the fence. All grass dies.
Well, what advice would you give young kids today or younger persons today about who are thinking about getting married? What would you advise them to do? What advice would you give them?
The first thing that I would advise young children is look at the family.
That's true.
And see if you can blend in with that type of a person. And this is asking a lot for young people, is look at the family. Are they people that you could live with? Are they people that you could care for? If you can care for the family, you can care for that person. And because look for people that you can dedicate your life to. Blend in with that type life. Now, there's been times that marriages are counteractive. For a better word, they may be a family that you dislike very much, but what kind of people are they? Are they good people? Do they want to help people? And number one, to me, is a Christian lady. Somebody that cares for God. Because if you don't care for God, what is the basis for your love for the woman that you want for your children? Is it somebody that you can dedicate your life to and not be afraid to give your life to, so to speak? Because that's what you're doing. And to me, it came easier because my parents showed me what dedication to one person, and that's God.
Well, when history is written, what would you like it to say about you as a married couple? When history is written, what would you like it to say about you as a married couple?
What would I say to a married couple?
What about us? What would you say about us?
When history is written, what would you want it to say about you two as a married couple?
My wife and I love one another.
That's true.
And if you could analyze or look at what went on here today, what is already passed in this interview, that we could sit here and talk about our past and not become disturbed or angry or anything like that. If there is anything that will tear a marriage up quicker than anything, is a fight and not settle it. You have to, if you have a problem, you've got to sit down and discuss it, and you've got to settle it. And one of the things that I was taught in growing up, don't stay mad at anybody. Don't. It tears you up. It destroys you. It will eat you up. You won't be in control. You've got to be in control as far as your relationship with one another. You've got to be honest. You've got to be sincere. You just have to. You can't build a marriage on lies. You can't build a marriage on a false promise.
Well, another thing is, my parents stayed married all the years, and his parents stayed married all the years. They set a good example for us.
Mm-hmm.
You see, that's part of it. That's part of it is your parents are honest and sincere with one another. They stay with one another. And so I feel so sorry for a young couple that does not have that example in front of them. I just, they have a fight on their hand all the time. They stay in a battle.
But there is going
So
to
to
be
speak.
disagreements. There's
And you-
always disagreements, you know.
You can't build a marriage on a fight all the time. You've got to settle it. And dedication. My first words that I used was dedication, and you cannot build a marriage unless it's dedicated to one another, because what I'm trying to get people to see is it's not what's on the other side of the fence. It's something that's right before your eyes. You have something right in front of you that you can build a marriage. You can build on it if you want to. But if you have doubts or fears, something like that, you're a loser. Because you've got to have that inner feeling towards one another, that regardless of what comes, it will work out.
Let me tell you something that he said in the Bible study one Wednesday night, and we were talking about relationships and about people, fighting over various things, and he just popped up and he said, look, he said, if it feels good, he said, go ahead and squeeze the toothpaste, it feels good. And what he was saying, of course the whole church cracked up, what he was saying is that don't fight over the little stuff. That's what it is, little stuff. And that's been basically their attitude most of that what I can remember of their lives. That cracked me up.
Well, now our parents, my parents and his parents all stayed together.
I know, and you never saw them. I mean, they had disagreements,
Sure.
yes, but you never saw them fighting over little stuff.
That's right.
No, you didn't. And they made sure that everything went right so your children could live right. In other words, my dad, the picture that I saw my dad going to worship and mother reading the Bible behind an old kerosene lamp and things like that still stay there. They stay there, and there's so much to be said and so much to be seen in a couple that's trying to merge two lives together that were raised different. That's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes all that two people can do is, it's not, you're going to have a fight. You're going to have disagreements sometime or other. It's what you do with it. If you did we get mad at one another?
Sure.
Absolutely. Two people can't live together without a hassle once in a while. But it's what you do with it. You can sit down. This is one of my policies, you might say, is not mine. It was given to me by God, because one of the things that He has taught me, that if I listen to Him and I trust Him and I follow in His path, all is well. But if I try to tell Him how to run His business, I'm a lost dog, because He created this old world, and He's fixing a place for us, and what He's fixing is so much better than what we've got here. And my pattern, when I was working, I was sitting and talking to my boss, and he said, Bill, what's your secret? Everybody likes you. And I said, my secret? I serve my Lord. I work for Him. I don't work for Sears. I do a good job that they have gave me to do, and they like it. So I'm going to continue to do it. And if there's something that I'm doing that they dislike, they'll tell me. And but I work for the Lord. I work for Him, and because He's got a place that I want to go. Mm-hmm. And whenever I do that, then I think I'm going to make it. And He's been so good to us. And so I treat her like God wants me to treat people.
Anything else you want to say before we close? Anything else you want to say?
Well, I appreciate you coming.
You're quite welcome. Sounds like discussion is a key.
Yeah, it is.
Around the dinner table, perhaps.
What kind of table was that? Oak? Walnut?
The table.
That's bothering me.
He wants to know what kind of table that we was around.
That what?
Was it oak? What was it made of?
Our table.
That round table you talked about.
Oh, you can't beat those big old round.
But what was it made of, Dad?
Huh?
What was it made of? What kind of wood?
Well, ours was made out of pine, but it was worn. And at the on one side, there was a great long bench. Had two boards, one this way and one that way, and that's where all of us kids sat. When Mama would holler, "Dinner's ready," shoo, away we went.
No hesitation, huh?
Well, if we, my older brother said, if you don't hurry up and get here, it's gonna be gone. So, no, that big old round table. And do you know what we had for chairs? big old cans, empty cans, lard cans.
Oh Lord, cans. Wow. Well.
We didn't have regular chairs. We had those whatever we could sit on, and Mom and Dad had the chairs with the backs.
Well, now you had the benches, didn't you have benches?
Well, that was for the kids. We had that one big long bench, but if there wasn't enough on that big bench, a lard can was just fine. But wherever we could sit, and like that. Oh, I wish I could show you the picture. We've got it in there, but it's a picture of the whole family. It's got over here at the end is an old Jersey cow, and she gave more milk than we could use. And I was sitting on that old cow. That was about the time I started school. And then there was Mom, Dad, and holding my younger sister was Floyd, and then there was Forrest, Jake, Forrest, and Faye,
And Perry.
and Floyd. Perry was number one. He was, we was a little bit jealous of Perry, because he was given privilege that none of the rest of us had, because they were the oldest. He was the oldest one, and he did more for Mom and Dad because he was older. And so what I say to the younger kids, don't be jealous of one another no matter what. And there's a song that I like. And talking to the Lord, keep me safe until the storm passes by. If we stay with it long enough, if we don't give up, all we have to do is stay. Just the Lord will take care of it. Just He'll make it right. He'll give us everything we need. Maybe a little, maybe a lot, but it's being satisfied with what He's given us. I don't know. We hassle, we fuss, and we become impatient about what we don't have more than we strive for things that we can get.
Well, we sure appreciate the opportunity to talk to both of you today.
Yeah.
It's been great. Thank you very
Well,
much.
I just want people to accept what is before us and be patient. One of these days, it'll all end. I was talking to a doctor not too long ago, and I said, I hate my glasses. I hate my pacemaker. And everything that I add to my body, I don't like it. And he sat there and he looked at me. He said, just think, one of these days they'll be perfect. That's it.